Yeah, I don't think too much about trying to get the ball out quick. You know, it's all depending on how much they bring from the side. If I don't, flip the protection, it's just really understanding if I'm hot or if I'm not. And then, with Coach Sark, it's really full field progression reads. Last year we worked more on RPO, and we had that opportunity to perfect it. And now we're trying to perfect, full progression reads, so reading the entire field this year. And I think implementing, pure progression reads and RPO is definitely going to be really big for us this season.
That's Tua Tagovailoa talking about full field progression, talking about earlier in the year when James had an opportunity to interview him. He talked about keeping his eyes and his feet together. Now, when you look at it, you think, man, Tua Tagovailoa, his biggest strength, a lot of people would have probably said that his progression was one of the areas that was the most improved over the prior starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. But when you really look at what Tua was able to do last year, I don't know that we necessarily took full advantage of full progression reading. And the best way, I'm telling you, if you ever want to see what full progression reading is, you need to take some film, go back to about 89, 90, when Gary Hollins was the quarterback under Homer Smith, okay? This guy was absolutely the best. I mean, Homer Smith, especially if a team's playing zone defense. When you play zone defense, there's windows, okay? And the routes, receivers have to know whether it's man or zone, and so does the quarterback. And why is that important? For instance, if you're running a drag route as a tight end, which means you're coming across the formation, across the field, if it's a zone defense, then there's a window between the two inside linebackers. And then if based on if you have a receiver coming deeper behind that, you may want to settle in that window. But if there's not a receiver, so that's the window you settle in. But if that window is going to be occupied by someone else, you go over and there's a window between if they're playing the corner in the short corner, the corner in the short side of the field, or if they have the linebacker there and they have a 2 deep or 3 deep and the corner's out and the outside linebacker has the outside zone, there's a window between the inside linebacker and the outside linebacker, and you settle there. Same thing between the outside linebacker and the corner. There's a window behind them, and between the two safeties, there's a window behind them, and there's a window. And each play has a primary receiver, the guy you look to first. And what Tua was saying, and defense is, it's like a moving part, James. That's why Saban says, if we play the wrong defense, but we all play the wrong defense, it still works. The problem you can't have is one playing one defense and another playing another type of defense. In other words, you can't have one guy playing 2 deep zone, the other guy playing 3 deep zone. You can't have one guy playing man and everybody else playing zone, because the defenses kind of rotate and move together, almost like an offensive line, except for they're not connected right beside each other. And so what Tua was saying about the eye thing, that if you missed that comment, he said, sometimes my eyes were faster than my feet. He would pre-read what defense he thought they were going to be in. I'll give you an example of what that means. If he comes out, James, and he thinks it's going to be where the corner rolls up to play the short zone and the safety rolls over to play the deep half of the field, and the other safety has the other half, and the linebacker is going to drop out, and this linebacker from the left side is going to be rushing, then when he sees that, if he reads that, then his first thought is what? Okay, if I have a curl route behind the corner, it's going to be open. If I have a guy coming to the middle of the field, this may be my read. So he would pre-read that, but he didn't always validate it. And what I mean by that is if that's what he thought he was going to pre-read and they showed him that, then when he snapped the ball, he was releasing it. Maybe not to the first guy because he read, okay, the second guy's going to be open. And that's where Clemson got him. That's where Georgia got him, is they showed him something. His eyes saw what he saw first, and then he tried to get it somewhere else. And either he could have gotten it there, James, but his feet weren't set correctly, so he didn't get as much on it. You think about the Georgia pass. He threw it late over the middle, but did he get everything on it? Remember how that ball kind of was out there. So that's what he's talking about. And then with Sark, Sark says, hey, listen, go through your full progression. You have to pre-snap read. I mean, that's when you hear Omaha, or Tom Brady making all their calls, all they're doing, if it's a pass play or a run play, is they're going, okay, this is the coverage I think they're in. Let me get into a better pass play, or let me give the guys the hot route so that they know whether to run a hot route or run the play that's called. So that's what they're doing. But those guys, when they take in their drops back, they're going, okay, that's not what I thought. They changed it up on me. Now I have to go through my progression, James. This is my first read, my second read, my third read. And the reason you want to do that is because, especially in a zone, it is impossible. Homer Smith, if the route tree is built correctly, Homer Smith did not believe that you could stop our offense because somebody was going to be open. Because like even at the backside of it, the fullback had a block on every play, but he had a route on every play. And based on how if they came, then that left the spot behind him open. If he dropped, then the running back went out into the flat in the spot that he vacated. So it didn't matter. And if Tua Tagovailoa can get to the point, think about this. This guy, RPO is pretty much a one-read system. You read that linebacker. If the linebacker comes up, you drop it behind him. If he drops, you give it. You hand the ball off. And it's a little more complex than that, but that's pretty much the concept. If Tua gets to the point where he's going through the progression, this is what's going to happen, James. Guys are going to find wide open spaces in zones, and so he's going to be hitting a wide open guy. If it's man and he's going through his progression, if he gets to the last guy, you know that somebody has been covering for a long time. And it's going to be awful tough to cover all of those Alabama linebackers all the way across the field. So if he goes through the progression, he's probably going to have as many or more big plays. But let me tell you who's going to benefit the most from full progression reading. Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Jerome Ford, or whoever's playing tight end based on how many tight ends and how many running backs. The running back position and the tight end position will benefit the most. That's why when we played, Gary Hollingsworth had tight ends and fullbacks that would have 50-plus catches because he would go through his progression. And as he went through his progression, a lot of times that's who ends up, James, getting those dump-off passes. Think about how many times you see not open, open. And that's going to make Tua even better. And that would be – so if you have a chance to go watch the scrimmage tomorrow, watch how often Tua doesn't get rid of the ball. Now, that doesn't mean you take the first guy that's open, okay? You don't go through the progression if the first guy is open. But if a guy's covered, what did we say about Tua sometimes? He thought that every pass he threw, he could get in there. And so he didn't always get to the guy that may have been a little more open. He sometimes forced the ball. With full progression reading, I think Tua Tagovailoa becomes virtually an unstoppable quarterback. I mean, literally, if the guy can get to the point where he can go through his progression and keep his feet and his eyes in alignment, he's going to be unbelievable. And the other part of that, James, is, throw in a little play action off of that with the running backs and these DBs questioning whether we're running the ball or not. Tua Tagovailoa wins the Heisman in 2019. Bounces back, wins the Heisman in 2019. Forget about Trevor Lawrence. Talk about Tua Tagovailoa. Is that fair?
You know, Tua is the betting Heisman favorite coming in.
Well, I mean, if Tua Tagovailoa improves, he's going to win the Heisman. If Tua Tagovailoa improves, he's going to win the Heisman. I mean, unless they fall in love with somebody else that they just don't want to give it to Alabama. But I think they feel like it's Tua's to lose at this point, and I think this new offense, the new progression, Tua working to get better. And don't forget, James, the wide receiver core supposedly is going to be better this year than it was last year.